Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Audio Advice live stream and giveaway, where today we're joined by some of our good friends over at Kanto in Riga to have some fun conversation. So just to give you guys kind of a general run of show, this is going to be an hour-long show. We're going to do the giveaway, the final giveaway, the big giveaway at the end of the show. So before that, this is all going to be Q&A based. So go ahead and get your questions in now because we do have a fun prize for giveaway. So before we kick it off, let's go ahead and go through introductions here. So Bryce, do you want to start us off?
Can do. So I'm Bryce and I work for the sound organization in America. So we import fine British audio equipment, including Rega, Cord Electronics, cord cables, and English Electric and Proact loudspeakers. But I'll focus on Rega today, but happy to take other things offline.
Awesome. Well, we always like to start these off with the fun questions, and if you're in the comments section, feel free to let us know. But we like to start it off with that. So, Bryce, what is your first system, or what was your first system, whenever that was?
My first system was granted, I worked in the industry, so I was probably on the indoors rather than the outdoors. I had a lovely Denson amplifier from Denmark, and I had some Dyne Audio Audience 62s, I think they were called. So I started on the wrong path many years ago, and now it's my job, or it's even still my job across the other side of the water. So good fun, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, Don, you want to go up next?
Mine is definitely not as exciting as Bryce's. Have to say, would have been young lad in high school, and it was a Pioneer mini system. That's kind of what I had, and that was the cool thing of the day.
Awesome. Well, so what do you do with Kanto?
So with Kanto, I'm an account manager, of which I would be regarding in sales and working with the audio advice team very closely to make sure that we have the right assortment of curated products that customers would be looking for.
Awesome. Jason?
I'm the product manager at Kanto, so I'm in charge of new product development. So just working with my engineering team during development, then linking up with the sales and the marketing team after we're developed, just to make sure everybody's on the same page about why we created the product and who it's for. My first system was also a mini system, but since Don already answered that, I got I'll talk a little bit about the speaker system for my computer, because that's probably where I got more in love with audio. I had a Monsoon Planar Media 14. So back in the day when Monsoon was still a company, they had a really sick planar flat panel speaker system for desktop use. And so it was an 8-inch woofer and 2 little satellites. And I loved it. And even welded my very first metal project in school was welding some speaker stands for the towers to get them to ear level.
Awesome. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick, and I do home theater design primarily, but I'm an audio nerd for pretty much all things audio and video. So my first system, I've had a system since I was like 12, which was hand-me-downs from my dad. But my first one that I bought myself was a vintage setup. I worked at a record store in college, and so I had a set of Ohm speakers and a Yamaha CR 2020. It's like an 80-pound AVR that I've moved with me like 8 times, and I'm sick of moving that thing. So it's now just a showpiece. It's not even plugged in anymore, but it was a fun setup. So
I hear there's some people that have got active speakers in tonight, Nick.
Yeah, well, that's what we're about to jump into. So for those of you here for the giveaway and just getting a fun conversation on the side, let's tell you a little bit about the giveaway prize. So Jason or Don, do you guys want to talk about the speakers first?
Yeah, we're doing. I know we're giving away a Ren for this for today's live stream. So Ren is our latest bookshelf powered speaker. Key differentiator between Ren and our other products is this is our first product with an HDMI ARC input. So we're giving you the versatility and seamlessness that a soundbar gives you, but of course, in a product that gives you real, true stereo separation and doesn't rely on a satellite subwoofer in the corner of your room that's tuned poorly. You get actual, real hi-fi quality sound with all the perks that HDMI ARC gives you, like, of course, being able to control the volume with your remote, and it being able to auto power down and up with your TV. So really slick, just how you'd expect it to act. And it's got some sound modes on it as well. So it's got a little bit of vocal enhancement and a night mode as well. So again, just trying to give you the certain, characteristics and niceties that you get with a soundbar with none of the downsides.
Awesome. And Bryce, I love to say this, and wait, there's more. So Bryce, what else are we giving away with it?
We are giving away a Rega Planar 1, which is our finely crafted turntable from sunny England. And along with that, a phono stage to make it work. So if you were very lucky to win both, but I'm sure the odds of that are very slim to none, but you could connect them together without any problem at all. Certainly the important bit to say is you don't see it in the picture there, but it's got lovely dust cover, and we're quietly confident of its resolve. It's about a $600 turntable these days, so it's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah. Well, fun fact, they're actually both going to the same winner. So if you do win, you get both the turntable, the phono stage, and the speakers. And we also, like I said, this is a Q&A driven platform, so we're going to get to that. But we have a prize for the best question as well that Kanto was nice enough to include. So you guys want to tell us a bit about what we're giving away there?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. We're giving away a pair of Aura desktop powered speakers. They are very funky and cool. There are 3 colors, and the winner actually gets to choose the color of their choice, which would be either matte black, matte white, or there is also a matte pink finish.
Awesome. Well, this is a great giveaway, so we're super excited. And just so everybody knows, like I said, we'll announce the winners at the end. The auras are for the best questions. So go ahead and get your questions in. The other ones are going to be a random drawing. So we'll go ahead and kick this off. Let's see. Let's start off with one for Bryce. So
trouble.
This was So, and again, guys, this can be about anything within the turntable or speaker space. So the biggest difference between the Rega 3RS and the Rega 6 sound wise, it's a hard one.
It's a difficult thing, like all of these things, to sort of describe a true sound wise difference. I'll tell you the mechanics of what's going on. So a Planar 3RS has a metallized phenolic, the same tone arm, a ND6 cartridge. I have my little ND6 model to hand, or an ND5 cartridge, and it has a Neo power supply. So the sound-wise difference, if you have the money, you should buy a 6. If you are admirable of the finish of a Planar 3RS, that's the one you should buy, because by proportion, the 6 looks plain. So in answer to our Much's question, 6 is the one I would buy. I would just save to buy the 6 instead of a 3RS. But the 3RS is an incredible value. In fact, it's 2/3 of my categoried product out the door right now. So it's super popular. Best value is about $1,800 US. So good saving in your pocket. But the thing to do is put your ears around one. I'm not gonna. I can delve into technicalities, but I sometimes find myself on a rabbit trail that's not very helpful. I'd say put 3 of your favorite records on, and you'll sell yourself one.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a Rega table at home. Their entire lineup's amazing, so you can't go wrong with any of them. But they've definitely got a price difference for a reason. I'll put it that way. So let's see. So I guess this one probably go to the Kanto guys first, and Brian, feel free to jump in. But do you see a trend away from amplifier receivers to powered speakers, and are there sound advantages?
I think so. I think that you're getting a lot more accuracy and DSP tuning in powered speakers than ever before. They're a lot more sophisticated than they used to. I know just even the difference between our products 10 years ago versus now are like such a huge difference. We were just basically using an amplifier with passive crossover and working as much magic as you can do with that. But at this point in time, we're able to extract a ton more performance out of the components that we have with DSP tuning. And that's something that is a little bit tricky to do with an amp and a receiver, unless you have some pretty stellar room correction on your receiver. It's really hard to dial in the sound exactly and flatten things out. So I think that for someone who has a lower budget and can't afford like a really super accurate pair of passive speakers with a receiver, or can't afford a really large amount of room correction, because when you start getting into the D-rack and stuff like that, there is a bar to pass in terms of price point. I think that power speakers offer a better value oftentimes. So people's space is getting smaller as well. It just kind of seems like a sensible choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, that's one of those things that you guys have full control over the design. So a lot of speaker manufacturers need to make their speakers able to be controlled by, any type of amplifier that's going to be out there, or at least have an ideal range. When it comes down to powered speakers, you can make you spec your woofers directly to your amplifier, and then you have control, like you said, of the DSP, which for those people who don't know, can you tell us, without going too deep in the weeds, a little bit like what DSP is?
Yeah, I mean, so it stands for digital signal processing. It's literally just using electronics to modify the sound, the tuning of your speaker, rather than passive components. Speaker manufacturers nowadays still, but even let's say 50 years ago, it was truly an art. Picking a woofer, a tweeter, creating a crossover, and making that thing flat and neutral. Hats off. It was an incredible feat when you see speakers that are 50 years old that sound incredible still today. But nowadays, you have the ability, if you have a deficiency in your woofer, say you're trying to make a budget product, and you get the limitations of the materials you're using. There's some ringing in the upper frequencies, so that's a common issue with woofers. Is you don't oftentimes get this perfect natural linear roll off. Sometimes you get a lot of jaggies. Trying to maybe get that out with passive components costs a lot of money. You got to use a lot of components to filter that out. Whereas with DSP, it's free. You can literally take your crossovers and components and match them kind of perfectly without this additional cost. So it's not just obviously great in the budget category. You see a lot of high-end speakers using DSP as well. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the magic, I feel like you really see it on the budget stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, DSP is very handy, and it's one of the things that really developed over the past 10, 20 years, and it's gotten extremely good. So DSP is I use it on a daily basis. Bryce, coming from an analog world, you guys don't use as much DSP.
We don't too much. We've still got to have computers and some things, but certainly you're right. You control all the parts of the recipe, which is the surmise of exactly what you're saying. It's logical. I obviously look after a lot of things and have looked after other things, and there's a lot of merit to keeping everything together, because the deficiencies and the perfect sections of what you're already doing. So not much more to add to that, to be truthful.
Gotcha.
Well, I just want to jump in for 1 second for those who may have been paying attention to what Jason just said, because you made a comment about something being free when you use DSP, and that's not exactly true, because the reality is there's two ways to get that sound, right? You can either be investing in a lot of engineering and development and putting in lots of different components on the design phase of a speaker crossover, which of course has both a cost of material and a cost of engineering dollars that goes into it. The difference is with the DSP, outside of the cost of the electronics, it's really just down to whatever are your in-house engineering costs of labor and technical knowledge to get it done. But the difference is once you have it nailed down, you can replicate it across thousands of units without any additional engineering investment, which does help us. Obviously, could bring really good audio to the masses is kind of what we're trying to do with various products. And the Kanto Ren is a perfect example of that, right? So we're able to marry in analog inputs for Bryce's Rega turntables and other analog sources. At the same time, we do incorporate USB-C for those who want to have really cool desktop large powered speakers. Ren can do that too, by the way. And then ultimately with the HDMI ARC, that's really getting the pinnacle of connecting your TV or other funky devices to it, and of which for those who do like streaming boxes, we have an optical input on it too. So there's a Toslink input for those who want to connect. So literally, it is truly a perfect ability to tie in all the different sources people want. And for those who are following along, there is Bluetooth too, so you can stream from your tablet or smartphone. So literally, pick a source, you can connect it to the Rens.
And the DSP will flatten it out. Perfect.
Exactly, yes.
So Bryce got one for you here. So is the turntable direct drive or belt drive?
Belt driven, because it's better at the as simplicity goes. If we were a DJ, it might be important. We're in reproduction, not typically mixing desk scenarios. So belt driven, I can go into the super science of why we use round belts that are specially burnished to be as round as possible. But really that allows you to disconnect the motor, because why is it better? I suppose is maybe a better way to define that is a motor by its very nature is a wiggly thing, and energy is conveyed into the belt still. And if you can imagine this, all a record is when we boil it down is it's a very precision needle in a groove. So any spurious motor noise or wiggling from the motor involved causes problems for you picking up the music. And I've seen crazy turntable designs where they have about 3 motors. What that does is that multiplies your problem by 3. It's not that complicated when you kind of rush it down to the bottom. There are some carefully well executed engineering exceptions, but there's not many, is the quick answer. So belt driven is always the way, from our baby turntable to our best turntable, the Naya, which is belt driven but with 3 belts, 1 motor with 3 belts to mathematically improve the results.
Yeah, it's one of those things that there are high-end belt or high-end direct drive tables that do a very good job, but generally, when it comes down to speed consistency, a belt is going to do a lot better. Kind of that flywheel effect, keeping it going. If you have any kind of juddering in the motor, it's less likely to occur, especially whenever we're talking, sub $2,000 tables, sub $1,000 tables.
There's some beautiful direct drives in the world.
Yeah,
I've never thought. I had the luxury of listening to them too, just like you guys. And I'm like, it's pretty. Doesn't it really sound as good as a Planar 2 or, naming no names? But I'm like, that's what the beauty. Your ears are way better for your decision-making, Jack, than mine. I would love you to find a lovely place to put yourself in front of 2 of them, and then you'll decide which one you want to buy.
Yeah. There's nothing like hearing it, says the guy that works for a online company currently. But no, seriously, if you have the chance, there's just not a lot of stores around. If you have a chance, there are audio shows, which I'm going to give a shameless plug ahead of time, and I'm sure you guys are going to hear more about it in the coming weeks. But we are doing Audio Advice Live in August, so it's August 1st through the 3rd. And we're gonna have all of these guys there, so you get to see Kanto, Rega, along with numerous others. So we'll have more information to come on that. But perfect excuse to kind of get out and listen to some cool stuff. So let's see here. For the Ren, when used without a sub, is there any volume downgrade or limiter deployed?
I don't know if Jason is frozen or not.
Jason's just thinking really hard and being very still.
I guess there's 2 of us on the call, so I can kind of jump in. So actually, it's the opposite. When you're using Ren without a sub, there's no downgrade. However, the amplifier is actually truly trying to drive all the frequency response. So it won't be limited. It just will not. It'll play very loud. It just will not play as loud if you were to alleviate some of the bass frequency demands by adding a subwoofer. So with the Ren, when you do add a subwoofer to it, it does cross over all frequencies below 80 hertz. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. And it is, I will say, 80 hertz.
He's now a spinning wheel.
Yeah, no, it's if it should be 80 hertz for the Rens when you do connect a subwoofer. However, for those who do want to continue to have their powered speaker performing full range, you can do so with the Ren as well. There is a subwoofer setting on the remote control where you could have a subwoofer handling additional sub frequencies while still having your Ren speakers playing full range. So there is the ability to do both actually with the Kanto Rens.
Very cool. And Jason, did you get a chance to hear the question?
Yeah, I saw the question. I didn't hear Don's response, so I'll just quickly, jump in that I wouldn't say there's a downgrade, but obviously when used with a subwoofer, you do open up the ability to play the thing pretty much uncorked fully without any distortion. That's the one thing that kills most speakers. When you have them playing loud, is they have to reproduce sub bass pretty loudly for your ear to hear it kind of evenly with the rest of the mix. So a lot of power is dedicated to producing low end, and when you relieve that pressure of delivering low end and you pass it to a sub, you get the full potential of the amplifier just focusing on the mids and the highs. So you can get louder, you reduce your distortion, and get a little bit better, what's the term? Snappiness?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool feature because a lot of there are speakers out there that have subwoofer outputs that don't cross over. Which for those of you who don't know what it is, it's low pass filter and a high pass filter. So low pass lets all the bass through, that goes straight to the sub. The high pass goes to the speakers at any design point that you want. The disadvantage, well, you know what? Why don't you guys tell us what the disadvantage of playing a speaker with a subwoofer without a crossover would be?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting additional low end, obviously, with just by adding a subwoofer. But again, you're just not relieving the speaker of playing that low end, right? So your speaker itself is just still playing full range. And there's also, you have to be a lot more diligent with getting the crossover settings right on the subwoofer when your speaker doesn't high pass. You need to make sure that you're matching it with the speaker's natural high pass. Whereas something like Ren and Tuck and Aura, it does the high pass and the low pass, so you can kind of just like slap them together, and it'll just cross over in the correct point, and you won't have any hump with overlapping frequencies. It'll just be nice and neutral and flat.
Bingo. Awesome. Let's see. So here's another one for you, Bryce. If you're starting the upgrade journey from your standard setup, what is your first upgrade you're making? Cartridge, acrylic plate, etc.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw the spanner in the works here and say, always listen to the thing that was just beyond what you thought you needed to spend. Doesn't matter if it's Kantos, doesn't matter if it's an amplifier, doesn't matter if it's a turntable, because upgrading things tends not to be that much of an improvement, to be truthful, versus the brother that's maybe the model up. So I'll use my lovely offending Planar 1 and Planar 2 for this example. Is the Planar 1 is a stellar thing, but if you hear a Planar 2 at a couple of $100 in the wrong direction, you almost forget the one exists. And that's not because it's not good anymore. It's just you've been used to better. And I do appreciate the fact that sometimes funds are limited. I would rather send you home for 2 months and be sure that you buy the right thing, rather than buying a one and then saying, well, I want to put a much better cartridge on it, Bryce. And now we're dangerously close to the price of the turntable for the cartridge, which is really the wrong way to do things. It's a bit like buying an average motor car and then saying, I'm going to put the sports tires on it and feel the difference. There is some improvement, but it's spending money in the wrong direction. I would rather frighten you early and say I think you said it yourself, Nick, when we were each model has an marked improvement difference. Mm-hmm. And they're all incredible value, but you've got to be exposed to it to be sure, or watch a lot of reviews, or talk to people, or attend something like this where there's real people. I'm not full of persuasion and guile. It's like, take 5 of your, as I said, 3 your best 3 records. And I always tell people this: a great record, a record you own but you're not sure of, and a record you don't like. And the record you don't like will prove to you that the turntable is worth investing in, because you might quite like it after you've heard it on a better.
All right, I like that. I like the idea. I'm like, I like a lot of records. I don't know if I own any that I don't like. I'll have to go pick one up.
Well,
and
you know, it's a
show.
strange comment, but I never observed it until I did it myself. And someone said, "Play something you don't like, Bryce." And I went, "It's a very strange way to do a demonstration, but here we are." And he said, "You are now way more subjective than you've ever been." And I went, "Oh, you're right."
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm just going to bring in an album of just random sounds of people yelling and be like, yeah, this sounds way better now. But no, so something interesting, people always think about upgrading their turntable. What is your opinion on upgrading the components of the turntable? Because some brands sell different platters, they sell, different head shells, different belts, different cartridges, record weights, things like that.
There's lots of merit to that if that's your design philosophy. We would rather crush as much for as little as possible into each tier. So, the simple thing that you'll be fully aware of if you start to look at Rega's side by side, for instance, is all the arms look similar. And the wand, the little bit, the black bit that you see where the cartridge goes at the end, a lot of them are common. They're all hand graded, but they're all coming off the same aluminium casts, and we're making sure that the bearings in different positions are better on the better ones and less good in the less good ones. But the important bit to say is, if you make 1,000 of them, you make them considerably cheaper than if you were just making 100 at a time. So some companies, and I'm sure the same applies for motor car companies, the ashtray in a lot of Fords is the same ashtray. Not that ashtrays are really a thing anymore, but the answer is, if you continue to do this and you apply your logic to many things in audio, be it speakers, you guys down below me on my screen will know, if you get great drive units, you go, right, we'll buy every single one of them from the drive unit manufacturer.
Yeah. Well, while we're on that same topic, I've got one that fits perfectly. So it's also, why was aluminum used for the woofer? And Kanto, you guys use different materials and different speakers, though.
Yeah, exactly. We're not beholden to one material. It literally just comes down at the end of the day to just like, when we're designing the product, what driver material is gonna offer the design goal that we want. Some of it is marketing. Like, we'll be perfectly honest, saying aluminum woofer is sometimes more attractive to some people than paper woofer. But that's not to say that some of the best speakers in the world don't use paper drivers, right? So it's really just like on a case-by-case basis. When we're developing a speaker, we're trying to match up drivers to tweeters properly, and sometimes that leads us to using aluminum. We're also just generally now, you're seeing a little bit more of a common design language between our speakers. We're trying to go for that kind of concave cone look with no real visual dust cap. And in the beginning, we were finding that typically what led to that pathway was an aluminum driver. I think now we're getting the technology, and our manufacturers are doing paper drivers without that visible dust cap. But early on, the reason why I say Tuck had aluminum is kind of for aesthetics.
Well, it's surprising because the Tucks, they went a lot deeper, I feel like, than the other speakers, at least at that time, in that kind of footprint. And I've got to tell a funny story. We were one of the first to really get a video up on those. And so you guys shipped us a pair before they were released. And so we set them up, and I had to prank one of the sales guys that was out there. He'd been there for a long time, and he was old fashioned, so he wasn't as big about the powered speaker side of things. He liked separate. So he came in, and I'd set the speakers up, but not only did I set them up, I was testing with a sub, but I had the sub unplugged, and I was playing the Tucks by themselves. And so he came in, I was like, what do you think about these speakers? And he listened to it. He's like, that sub's doing a lot of work. and the sub wasn't even plugged in. So I was like, yeah, they do a good job. So, and a lot of that, even though the aluminum was kind of used, you guys said, for the marketing side of it, I feel like it yielded more overall bass. Maybe it's the rigidity of the woofer able to handle a little bit more, but they definitely had some low end output.
Yeah. They are aluminum drivers generally tend to be more rigid without additional doping or processing that goes into paper cones. So oftentimes it is a really good solution for like a mid-tier product, on like a lower end product when maybe you can't afford a super high end paper cone. So it worked out pretty good for some of our products. But again, we got Kevlar in some of our products, we got paper. So yeah, it really just ultimately comes down to just when we're designing it, what works best for the solution we're trying to create.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a bunch of. It's funny when the conversation comes up about which materials being used, because there are a myriad of reasons why you would choose one material over another. Because ultimately, if you're trying to, your brain would say, oh, if I'm trying to eliminate ringing as being something that every material pretty much on Earth has a ringing frequency of some kind, then at what point do you want to try to say, well, last I checked, aluminum rings? True. But there is that flip side of you want to try to have something that's as rigid, but ultimately as lightweight as possible, so you can have it as snappy, as responsive as possible. So this is where you come down to on the engineering side, frankly, without getting into too much technobabble that would bore the audience. But realistically, you want to find out what's going to give you the most rigid, strongest surface area of a cone that's going to hold the shape and deliver the frequencies without any type of deflection or deformation. And then the flip side is you have to have it be as light as possible to also not collapse on itself, right? So there's a bunch of different reasons why you're looking at different materials, and they all do have a different cost of manufacturing. That's not be naive to that fact. So if you're trying to hit a specific price point in the market, then ultimately what Jason and the team of engineers do in our world would be trying to evaluate the pros, cons of all material and then balance that with the artistic side, which don't always align. When someone's designing the look of something, that may look really funky, but might be really difficult to make sound good, right? So you have all these different moving pieces that you're trying to then formulate, how do we make this work, and ultimately hit the budget that an audio advice client and other clients around the world would be willing to part with their hard-earned money for, right? So it's a balancing act. It really is. And ultimately, we hang our head up high in saying whether it was a previous product, like Nick mentioned, like our fantastic Tuck speakers, which absolutely hit deep, shocking everybody with how low the bass is in Tuck. I will completely admit to that. There's times when I've heard it, I'm like, how is there no subwoofer running? And then you look at the Ren, which hits almost as deep, frankly, but the trade-off, not in sound performance necessarily, it was also at a lower retail price point, because now we're talking in the 600, 650 for a pair of Rens. We're able to deliver far more connectivity. So again, what's your ultimate desire? Is it, hey, I want the best sounding Kanto speaker that's going to work with X source? Well, then it may be something else you're looking for. But on the other hand, if you want the best, most flexible to connect to any of your devices, it's pretty hard to beat the Ren right now. And the engineering team and design team, I think, did a superb job on it.
Yeah. A lot of people get caught up on different tweeter types, different woofer types, and they say, oh, I don't like X tweeter type or X woofer type. There's never two speakers that sound identical. It's really hard to categorize, and I know we're quick to do that, especially we hear one speaker that we don't like. We're saying, oh, I don't like aluminum tweeters, for example, and you may find another one. They say, oh, they're bright. You may find another aluminum tweeter that's very, very laid back. So it just depends. Again, things do have a certain sound signature, but it's hard to say you don't like them. Awesome. Well, let's throw another one over here on Bryce's side. So if you were to listen to the same song on Turntable and compare it to the streaming version, would you be able to tell a difference?
Yes, is my quick answer. Don't get me wrong, I advocate for streaming as I do turntables, but would I hear a difference? I'd probably say there's less computers in the way with a record player, which is something that I'm not going to walk off in the blind test me 1,000 times and I'll get it right as many times. I might get it wrong. once or twice, but from my years of doing this, I can kind of go, oh, that's a cracking streamer. That's a cracking turntable. I don't really care anymore. I'm not that. No animosity is given. I think there's people fighting the wrong kind of holy wars on playback devices. I love vinyl because I can probably leave funny wee sleeve notes for my son and my family when I'm dead, which won't happen with a streaming platform. When he plays, when he pulls this record out, there's going to be a bit of nostalgia there, and there might be something that's more important to me. This is music I used to listen to with your mother. Will be something that will be more important to me than necessarily if I'm worried about is a streamer better or is a vinyl better or can I hear the difference. I probably don't care.
Yeah,
which is a super. That's, I'm trying not to dodge the question, Scott, but that's my way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, so I think that there are differences, of course, between both. I think there's a bell curve inside of the audio world. It's like whenever you start out, you say nothing really matters. You get up at the top and you're very opinionated on one or the other, and then you come back down the other side, kind of as your knowledge grows, and you're like, both are very good for different reasons. And so that's kind of where I sit. I probably stream more, even though this is only a part of my albums. I've got way more, and I listen to a lot of albums, and I think there's two different experiences. I think for analog playback, you can really mold the sound of your system in a subjective way. So meaning like if I like certain things, I can seek it out. Just collecting, different pressings have different sounds. There's a lot to it. So there's a fair, fair points to both of them. But, from a, ones and zeros line, I'm sure you can get a lot of accuracy out of streaming that you probably can't in certain analog playback, but there's a nature to it it's hard to deny. That's for sure.
I think I would be able to tell the difference because I rarely clean my records. So I think the crackling would probably give it away in my house.
Yep, I'd be able to tell a difference because I'd be the one putting it on the turntable versus pressing the play button. So,
I think I would say that record players at modest cost have always outperformed streamers to my experience, that's topical, I suppose, or that's a hot topic. But I've heard some average streaming that's been killed by a Planar 1 or a Planar 2. And then I've heard some amazing streaming that's dangerously close. I would almost say that technical brilliance aside and all that kind of thing, I almost say put yourself, doing a lot of this, put yourself in front of it and you'll know pretty quickly, Scott.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think there's a clear winner. The I like I said, the emotional side of it, and I also think that for streaming, I think you can get in at that price point. Like you can get a really good streaming setup for very cheap. Because DACs generally are going to be more affordable because it's less. I say less technology, but it's cheaper to build than a really good turntable. So you can get a really good DAC, something like a Chord Mojo, and that's going to smoke a lot of tables in its price point. But I don't want to make Bryce too angry while I'm on here. So
no, that's all right. I'll see you soon enough.
Yeah, Bryce will see me soon enough.
Live. I'll see you there.
So let's see on to the next one. So I see Ren's are rear ported. How far away should they be from the wall for best performance?
So in our manual, we just have like a blanket statement, like 20 centimeters, which I think is like 8 inches. But really, like as long as your port's not directly against the wall, like as long as you got a little breathing room, the port will still function. But I think the more important thing is for best performance, it's going to be based on your room and your listening position. Because essentially, when you move speakers closer to a wall, you get more bass reinforcement. It's just the way that low end works. It kind of, the sound waves bunch up in corners and walls. It's called room gain. There's a bunch of different words for it. But where you're sitting, if your speakers are sounding a little bit thin, putting them closer to the wall might solve that issue. And if you got some boomy peakiness, you probably want to pull them away from the wall. So it's totally going to depend on your setup. your personal preference too, in terms of like what sound signature you want. So no clear answer, unfortunately.
Yeah. The other thing that people often forget when they're looking at the type of around the question of how far away or where should it be, whatever. Ultimately, as great as we can engineer speakers to be, and for them to sound and perform, ultimately the one thing we have zero control over is the actual room they're put in. So if it's put in an aquarium of all glass sides, it's going to sound very reflective and very bright, right? I mean, it's just we can't control, and nor could the listener at that point easily control how something is going to sound if it's in a very reflective metal room or glass room. So ultimately, yeah, no, the room is going to be much more impactful for the end result of the sound than the actual speakers themselves.
Yeah, it'd be a little fishy if somebody put them in an aquarium.
Oh, pun intended! Pun intended.
Oh dear.
Oh, here we go.
All right, sorry, that's my one.
I'm glad we're here.
All right, I get one. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, on to the next question. So, why do Rega turntables use lightweight plinths instead of heavier ones like other brands?
Okay, because we want to have less interaction between all that a record player is when you drill it back down as a vibration measuring tool. So it's watching those undulations, or it's following those undulations in the groove. So we believe that when you start to look at the mathematics, generally energy goes into heavy things, changes frequency, and comes back. So we would like as little energy in the plinth as possible. That's why if you take a look at the underside of a Rega, you'll see it's got clever rubber feet. But if you look at the top of the rubber feet, there's typically 3 little dimples that allow isolation from the plinth itself. And then you've got the plinth. And these are all tiny minutia type details. I'm sure that Kanto will explain the same. It's all the tiny things can sometimes metric up to massive quite infrastructurally different results. So we use light because it's going to gain less energy from the music you're playing. And I was chatting to Nick, I was talking to him about a slide today where some clever physics guy gave me the equation that I needed to look at, which was, I said, I'll polish that one up for a better presentation for us all.
Yeah, I was going to put you on the spot and make you do a physics equation in front of
everybody.
Oh,
I'm not very good at physics equations.
Hey, man, it's all right. I'll help you out. No, I'm kidding. So we got another fun one here. So what is eARC? How is it different than regular HDMI? Or I guess you could say HDMI, just regular ARC.
Yeah. So eARC compared to, let's say, ARC, the OG standard. So eARC is an improved standard that allows more bandwidth. So the reason that eARC was needed is because ARC couldn't actually pass a full-blown DTS master or Dolby lossless. I forgot the actual trade names of these things. But basically, when you were using ARC and you were using a surround mode, you would get lossy audio. There was no way to pass full lossless audio. So eARC was needed to increase the bandwidth of, however many channels are being sent out at full, resolution, and typically higher than CD quality resolution as well. On a lot of the Blu-ray, Ultra HD stuff, where you're getting into high-res formats per channel. So it was just a bandwidth limitation. In terms of our products, we just make stereo products, so eARC actually doesn't do anything for us. We have enough bandwidth in ARC already. So yeah, there was. It's funny, kind of talking about what Don was previously saying about cost to develop a product. We would love to have eARC in our product strictly for the marketing purpose of it, but there's no need for us as a stereo manufacturer to use eARC in our products. So yeah, it's kind of funny how that goes.
Well, it's a strange one too, because ultimately it's like, sure, for a marketing initiative or effort, even though there's no actual benefit to our product, or very little to none anyway for the end result of it. But there might be for certain connectivity applications. But ultimately, would someone want to pay, $100, $200 more just to be able to say it has eARC for something that they may never benefit from, right? So that's kind of us also helping the consumer out by saying, yeah, we can do it if you really want to, but you want to pay for it? Like, frankly, here's what we think is what would yield the best results for the majority, if not 99% of the use cases.
Yeah. And like they were saying, it's for object-based formats. So your Dolby Atmoses, your R3, your DTSX, things like that. If you wanted eARC on there, all you're going to do is accept theoretically a object-based surround and then down mix it to a stereo signal. So nothing gained, and so you actually save more money. And it's it's going to be pretty versatile as far as art goes. But I did get one on here. So while I've got you guys, I've got to make a plug in here. So Kanto, you guys make more than just speakers, and I wanted to take a special second to shout you guys out on making some of the best speaker stands in the game, especially the price point.
So we have obviously another side of our business. We're talking right now, we're representing Kanto Audio, but we also make mounting products. We have years and years and years of experience with metal products. So we take that experience in metal products and accessories, and we can apply it to speaker stands. There's a lot of audio brands out there that might have accessories available, but usually they're not designed in-house, they're not bespoke. All of our designs are from the ground up, so we have full control over what we're doing. We make 3 different models of floor stands. We make like 3 different models of desktop stands. So we got you covered where you listen to most of your music. And you can see there kind of starting from the left-hand side, you have the S series, so just tilting stands, the SE series in the middle, which is an elevated stand. And then you have the platform stands, the SP stands as well. So a bunch of different options for your desktop. And then on the floor standing side of things, we got the ST stands at our entry level, which have, and then these are the SPs that you're looking at, which have a full metal design. The ST stands have an MDF base. These have a steel base, so you get a little bit more, just obviously peace of mind. It just feels a lot more planted. And then our flagship, the SX stand, is got full blown isolation system. It's got 2 different channels inside the column, one for fill, one for cable management. You can adjust the height or leveling of the speakers from the top of the stand with an Allen key rather than getting underneath them. So we even thought about like just how people are going to install them and the workflow when you're setting them up to make sure that's simple as possible as well. So a lot of time and effort is put into our speaker stand. So thank you for bringing them up.
Yeah, and to continue the shameless plug, one thing that we're not naive to the fact is we love to show the imagery with Kanto speakers on our Kanto stands. However, we do know that there's a lot of speakers. Our Kanto stands are often used with every other brand of speaker out there because they are universal. So you can find, as long as it fits the footprint of the speaker and it actually measures up to be the right dimensions, you can use our speaker stands with any speaker. And importantly, what we do, and Jason kind of hit on there a little bit, all of our speaker stands employ some form of sound isolation materials to it. So none of it's just going to be hard surfaced, rate touch. There's always going to be either silicone, acoustic silicone used for a buffering isolation material, or acoustical foam to help make sure there's always decoupling and no ringing and resonance between the speaker, the stand, and the hard surface. So that's a big part of why our speaker stands are also used, because even if they're not like a floor stand, for example, or desktop stands are often just to help isolate the sound and make sure there's no vibrations and resonance and reduce that, because again, vibrations and resonance is just another form of distortion, which ultimately you want to eliminate.
Yeah, well, yeah, and there's something big about getting your speakers to angle towards you, especially at near field. So for those of you who don't know, sound travels like light does. So imagine shining a flashlight. If you're up close, it's going to be a small beam. Further away, it's going to widen out. So if you're close, sometimes just angling those speakers up will get you a lot better, I guess, high frequency, because you're better off-axis performance because you're now on axis. But yeah, so it's a general thing. I had to throw that in there. For all you out there, we didn't necessarily plan this. This was something I wanted to shout them out because I love their stands. So
a good stand is hard to find.
Certainly
when I was in Nick's glorious position of things, there was many speaker stand manufacturers, and now there's very few. So it's good that you're still doing good stands at great value that fit a lot of things.
Yep. Or you could be like me with my first setup. There was 2 bar stools under my speakers for about 6 months. So that's a broke college kid for you. So on to the next. So is there a performance difference between built-in phono stages and an external phono stage?
Yes. It depends on the project and what you're trying to do. If you can imagine, what a phono stage is doing is turning your tiny signal into a bigger signal. And much as we were talking about DSP and things like that, you want to do it properly with the components that you require, not extras, not bonuses. You just want the results. So we, in almost all cases, recommend keeping a phono stage separately and having your turntable on the given length of wire that the arms have. So, for instance, I had a bad presentation prop to discuss, but there's the length of the tone arm cable that comes out of the bottom of a Rega. For all intents and purposes, it's a tiny signal that's generated here that has to travel along here and then come out at the red and the black point to be made bigger, for lack of better terms, or preamplified is the proper way to talk about it. So certainly you want to have the phono stage that's appropriate to the cartridge you want, but I would always spend as much money on the front, get a lovely phono stage that works, get some lovely speakers that work if they're actives, or get yourself a lovely amplifier and get on with it. So generally I would always go because it will do its job better, because it's designed for it.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought too. I mean, a phono preamplifier isn't necessarily the most fun thing to upgrade for a lot of people.
Far from sexy, and
it's far from sexy, but it makes such a huge difference because you're taking such a low level signal that's pretty much a passive signal for all intents and purposes, and amplifying it up to such a high level that it just makes an incredible difference. And having your own dedicated power supply and signal path and all these nerdy things that I can tell you about. Long story short, it makes a huge difference. And it's one of the first upgrades that I do on most systems. If I've got dedicated, even powered speakers or a receiver, it's one of the first ones I make. So let's see. Here's another one. Is there a common or signature Kanto sound, or is each new model more of a greenfield project? Get the best possible sound given the constraints of the new material, design, language, etc.
I think our different models have different sound signatures because they're all aimed for different use cases. So, for instance, Aura and Aura 4. They're advertises, reference speakers. Like, we actually wear that name on our sleeve because we tune them to be pretty much as neutral as possible. They're a little bit more fun sounding than, say, a completely analytical studio monitor. But if you're just having one set of speakers and you want to do a little bit of production on them or sound design, you can still use the Auras to do that sort of thing. Where you look at something like Tuck and it has a bit more of like a showroom sound. It's got a little bit more bass and it's got a little bit more treble. Really good at listening at lower volumes, and then when you crank it up, you get that kind of like impact and a little bit of that sizzle. You can dial it back a little bit with EQ if you want, but tuned from the factory, they're kind of designed to grab your attention and impress you. And then something like Ren, we kind of had it, split in the middle. We were like, these are going to be used in living room. They're going to have a lot of, there's going to be a lot of like decay. There's going to be a lot of like furniture absorption, carpets, that sort of thing. So they can't be perfectly analytical. Otherwise, they might sound dull. So we kind of give them just smooth, smiley face. Nothing too intense, nothing outrageous or egregious, but like just a hair in there. So every single time we design a speaker, we do think about their use case and how to tune them for that use case.
Yeah. And a lot of people, especially starting out, think that, oh, I want a perfectly flat speaker that plays just dead flat. And from a psychoacoustic standpoint, I'm not going to put on my complete nerd and or tinfoil hat about this, but most people don't prefer a completely flat sound. And even if you get a speaker that plays completely flat, by the time you get it into your room, it's not going to perform completely flat. Your voice sounds different outside than it does inside, or in every room in your house, it sounds slightly different. Even though you still recognize it, just sounds different. So that's how it goes. But no, I like that you guys kind of do different speakers based off of them. Do you have kind of like so some speakers are made to be more near field versus some are further away? Do you guys change the way you develop your speaker based off of that?
So I think the only thing that really dictates that is like when we're designing a near field speaker, like something like for desktop use, like say Aura, we have to be a little bit careful when we're designing like the waveguide for that product, just to make sure that it is kind of like directing the sound more at you than giving like a super wide dispersion. Because when you're using a near field, you kind of actually want a little bit of a narrower field. It's kind of funny, like when you look at like hi-fi speakers, a lot of people really tout how like wide and directive, and like on like a near field speaker, you actually kind of want it to be a little bit more direct. So yeah, it does kind of change when you're doing near field versus far field as well.
Yeah, that's what kind of I was talking about earlier with the stands to point it up towards you, so that it definitely helps depending on what your dispersion is.
Mm-hmm.
So we got time for about one or two more. So Bryce, do you want to hit this one? Would a Rega turntable benefit from an isolation platform?
It might, unlikely. In some circumstances, I would always suggest putting it on a wall bracket, which is perhaps not the most room-friendly suggestion, but you lose the floor-bound problems that record players, doesn't matter if it's a Rega or if it's somebody else's, some direct drive thing, it will lose the floor-bound vibrations when you put it on a bracket on the wall. So would it benefit? Yes, there are some wonderful isolation products in the world, in the market. I would test it, because I would rather you buy 22 new albums than buy an isolation platform that doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys actually make a wall mount. I don't know if we have it up on our website, but we need to if we don't. But just the wall mount makes a huge difference, because a lot of that energy isn't going to be traveling all the way up, especially you mount it to a stud.
Yep.
It's not going to be traveling to the stud. It can travel to the sheetrock, but you mount it to a stud and you should be good to go.
It's all basics. The sentiment that we said before is it's energy, and if you can reduce, because what it is a tiny little pickup, so more energy in a space, an isolation platform might work, might not. Wall bracket, certainly, chances are it will cost less and work better.
Bingo. All right, well, I think we got time for one more, then we're going to get to the winners. So let's see. Last one's for Kanto. Which would you, for which would you have better results, connecting HDMI ARC or optical?
For usability, HDMI ARC 100%. It lets you use one remote to control your system. Unfortunately, when you're using optical, typically that TV is sending just a full range signal. You can't really adjust the volume of that optical, so you still need to carry around a second remote to adjust the volume. And then you have to rely on the speakers auto on, auto off to make sure your speakers are turning on, turning off your TV. Whereas HDMI ARC is literally just plug and play. You can adjust the volume on your TV, and the speaker will adjust. And when you turn your TV off, the speakers will turn off as well. So usability-wise, HDMI ARC, awesome. In terms of sound quality, it's the same. It's literally just a digital signal, and it's whether it's being sent HDMI ARC or optical. When it goes through the DAC of our speaker internally, it's going to pump out the exact same. So no difference in terms of sound quality.
Yeah, on the 2-channel level, he's exactly right. Once you get into home theater, give us a call. The HDMI can be a little bit better, but awesome, guys. Well, this has been a great conversation. So let's get on to winners. So I'm going to do best question first. So like I said, we've got the auras for best question, and my team helped me pick this one. So is there
Who
a
won this
common
one? Who won? Who won? Excited.
SBSFO? So reach out to us. Is there a common or signature Kanto sound question? So that one's awesome. So thank you for asking those questions. On to the big winner. We have Matt Carroll in Urbana, Illinois. And so reach out to us. We have your P1 and Kanto speakers along with a Phono stage generously supplied by Rega. So really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. Thanks everybody for coming in and asking questions. And I hope everybody has a good evening. We'll see y'all soon.
Thank you.